the more you go into that, the more access you have to the freedom on the other side. There's so much freedom in breaking the patriarchal rules of being the goddess. There's so much freedom in saying fuck off to transcending. So much freedom when we get to put down the ways that we've been chasing perfection and cultural beauty, and we get to embrace wild, and we get to embrace truth, and we get to embrace the crone, and we get to embrace not having things figured out, not being beautiful. Even that, of course, is beautiful, but more so the essence of being willing to go into a place that may not look beautiful, and what that can liberate within you for true beauty, true radiance.
Yo, 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 lovers. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Sex, Love, and Everything in Between. We're the O'Neills. You're here with Megan Jacob.
And this is the place we have really uncensored conversations about sex, intimacy, and relationships. We're super excited you're here. Enjoy this episode. Hi, beautiful humans. Welcome back to Sex, Love, and Everything in Between. I have such a fucking exciting guest for us today. We're going to have such a killer conversation. We've just had some tech issues and we were just saying the foreplay's been epic, or there's been a lot of foreplay for this conversation.
So much.
Energy. We're ready to go. We have the beautiful Madelyn Moon with us. Welcome, Madelyn.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It is an honor and a treat to be here.
I love introing people, and we kind of did this before, but I'm going to do it again. I love introing people, not necessarily with your standard bio, but just how I found you and why I'm inspired by your work. And I found one of your reels 3 or 4 years ago, and just immediately, just the way you bring yourself to Instagram and the way your creativity just pulses through you and pulses through the screen, it just stood out to me so deeply. And I was saying that before in a space that can sometimes feel just very kind of copy paste. Your work stood out to me so deeply, and I've been following you ever since then, and just love, again, your perspective on relationships, masculine and feminine dynamics, feminine range, and full feminine expression. And I also love that it's just not you're an incredible teacher, but also the way you embody that is phenomenal. And the way you the felt experience of witnessing you online is so deeply embodied in your work. So I'm so grateful for you and your work and what you bring to the world first.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I've been teaching for, I think at this point it's been 13 years in some way, shape, or form. Since the very beginning, when I first made my first Facebook account. My quote fan page. And it wasn't really until I integrated my ridiculous side and my humor and just my creative expression in that way that I started to find my unique blueprint of being a teacher. And, the last version that we recorded before the tech issues, you said the word regurgitation. I am not regurgitating a lot of what we see. And part of my creative expression via comedy came through out of actually a frustration with this regurgitation space. I was I'm a part of this. I'm a part of this swirl of same thing. Everyone's saying the same thing. Blah. And I was a part of it. And I was looking at myself and I was I am frustrating me. And that frustration is really what led to me finding my comedy, or integrating, I'll say. Because if you knew my dad, you'd be okay, I can understand how you are the child of this man. Because my dad is probably one of the goofiest men anybody has ever met. And so once I really was able to embrace that part of me that is him and bring that online, all of my business expanded. And I found a way to teach that was different than the same. It was different way to teach the same. And I think everyone has that capacity. Maybe it's not comedy, but the capacity to integrate some part of them that's really sparkly and different or weird or quirky in their work that is going to resonate with the world deeply.
And I love what I see you teach on relationships. And I really bring this through in my work with women as well, around like, I love what you just said around, you like worked with this part of you. You worked with like, I could almost see it in your face, like the disgust of the part of you was like, ugh, like I'm part of this regurgitation. I'm part of this industry. And you like brought that through and worked with that to bring through like a deeper expression. And one of your one of the reels you've done the last few months, that gremlin one, or like there was one, I fucking loved that.
Oh yeah, the goblin. Yeah.
Yes, the goblin. And I just, because I'm in my own, I've been with my husband for 10 years, and probably the last 5 have been me coming into my full expression and me, I say like descending into my body. Before that, I was just like shoulders up, I'm this good girl, and like da 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 da. And that has been a huge part of my journey with him. It's like learning how to not go like, and I was very ultra spiritual before that. So I'm not jealous. I don't get angry. I don't like, I'm beyond all of that. I've bypassed and transcended all of that. And one of the most powerful things for my relationship has been to like own my jealous bitch, and to like own, you know, the craziness that I feel, and like own all these different parts of me and integrate them into and integrate them and allow him to witness me in those pieces. And I'd love to hear, I'm sure, I'm going to assume from what I see in your work, this is like a deep desire that women come into your world with, like a yearning to like liberate these parts of themselves that have been hanging in the shadow, these parts of themselves that are told like unallowed or undesirable.
Yeah, there is an entire world in what you're speaking to, an entire world with so many doors we can open. And it's kind of never ending. One of the things I just want to point out, because you demonstrated it so beautifully, is that when you were talking about the transcended version, your voice got really high. I'm not jealous. I'm above all that. And that's how a lot of us, a lot of women are walking through the world. We live in a transcendence obsessed society. Our, you know, in the West, at least, the number one religion here is Christianity. And I think that there is a lot of embodiment, kind of like, not warnings, but a lot of mystery within our Christian roots around a story where our main God was transcended and disappeared rather than put back into the soil and the earth. And I'm not saying anything is right or wrong or true or not true or anything like that. Just, wow, isn't that interesting that we have a country and many countries that have a story at the heartbeat of it around transcendence. And then we have all these humans walking around unawareingly obsessed with transcending, with purity, with a disconnect between primal desires. And what happens is our energy gets really high. We leave the earth. We become flighty and anxious. We leave ourselves. And then when you started talking about your jealousy and your primal bits, your voice got deep. And everybody listening to this podcast will trust that voice over the and it's why there's a lot of mistrust that's happening out in our world, is because all these nervous systems of flighty, transcended, obsessed people trying to lead each other. And it's very rare that we have someone come in that drops the bass and brings the earth and brings the fire and brings the womb. And our culture, thanks to people like you who are speaking about these things on podcasts, it's waking up. It's waking up to the need for deep, primal allowance, acceptance, receivership. And it's the answer to a lot of the things that we're struggling with. Like a lot of times I have women come into my work that will have frustrations around not feeling really spicy with their beloved, and their beloved's trying all the tricks and they're going to tantra and they're eye gazing, but yet I'm plateauing and I can't experience the realms of intimacy I'm trying to reach. And it's because you are inviting him to fuck the beautiful pieces, yay, but you're not inviting him to fuck the gnarly pieces, the goblin, the gremlin, and that's where your deepest orgasm lives. It's when you get to do shadow work and be penetrated there. Like, show him that side of you, the dark side of you, the scary side of you, the wild side of you, the ugly side of you, the spitting side of you, the inside out side of you, the dirty, the nasty, and not just I'm a dirty girl, but like dirty. Like, can you get dirty and messy? And I am still on my own journey of how much more deep can I go into that? Because I've been called out before. Okay, yeah, that's dirty and wild and crazy, but you're still making it pretty. We are conditioned to make these different parts of ourselves goddessy. We're still making our goblin goddessy, myself included. It's really deep. It's really deep. And the deeper we can go into those nooks and crannies of our body, our bones, our blood, that somatically we don't know how to access, when we really make it our life's work, at least our work right now, to access those places somatically, so much of your body now gets to be utilized and experienced. And so much more of you not just can now love, like the goblin gets to love, but they get to love her. He gets to love the goblin. And it's pretty remarkable work. And of course, that one act of going bravely into shadow work and to give a shape and give a form to a part of you that you haven't yet liberates whatever's on the opposite side. So this is the premise of shadow work. The more you go into any shadow of yourself, and I'm not talking about like writing in a journal about your shadow. I'm talking about acting out, enacting, embodying. The more you go into that, the more access you have to the freedom on the other side. There's so much freedom in breaking the patriarchal rules of being the goddess. There's so much freedom in saying fuck off to transcending. So much freedom when we get to put down the ways that we've been chasing perfection and cultural beauty, and we get to embrace wild, and we get to embrace truth, and we get to embrace the crone, and we get to embrace not having things figured out, not being beautiful. Even that, of course, is beautiful, but more so the essence of being willing to go into a place that may not look beautiful, and what that can liberate within you for true beauty, true radiance.
Oh my God, all of this. I love when you said we're still trying to like dress our goblin up as the goal, like goddess. So
yeah.
And I feel one of the biggest like yearnings, or like, not even say like it's an ache, that many women come into my world with is it's like, I want him to welcome all of me. I want to be witnessed in all of me. I want all of me to be loved in the space. And what I also see is a lot of women waiting for their man to somehow give them permission to bring that. Mm-hmm. Or feeling this sense of like, oh, I can't bring that until he. And I know on my journey, I felt that for a while. And I'd love to hear your perspective on this. But what I found is like, this is a huge part of what I see as feminine leadership. It's us being, I'm a bring the goblin. I don't know what the fuck is, and also granted, we feel there's a level of love and safety and all these things as the foundation. But, to be able to not feel that we're having to wait for some level of permission slip, because that's never going to fucking come. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be uncomfortable when we first do these things.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's a few things that I want to say here. The first one is, speaking directly to what you're talking about, that's outsourcing. That is pure outsourcing, that I can't bring parts of me online. And it's actually because this is the real reason why. It's not only just outsourcing responsibility to your partner in that moment, but it's actually an inability to be with the feeling that's going to come up when you enact in that way. So that's the actual key to go into, is what's the feeling that comes up? Even when you just imagine revealing your let's say like your agony. Like let's just say agony. Like maybe there's some agony in you, or some jealousy. Actually, that's a better one for this example. There's jealousy, and you want to make some art with it, or you want to reveal it, or you just want to like full-bodied just show him how you feel with your jealousy. The real thing that people are avoiding is how they're going to feel normally in that tiny little pause after they do the thing. So let's say you say something, you show something, you do a temper tantrum, and then there's that little moment after you're done where it's silent. It's kind of like if anyone's ever screamed inside of a car and then you stop and then the silence like echoes in your ear. We have an embodied silence. And then in that silence, so much can happen. We can like, oh, we want to like fix it. You want to fidget. You want to say something afterwards. You want to then disperse energy. You want to disperse the energy that you just created. You just created a whole bunch. Now you're uncomfortable and you want to disperse it by explaining it, by asking him a question about it, by leaving the moment because it's all too much. The deepest work is expanding your capacity to be with that moment of silence without changing anything, fidgeting, dispersing the energy, waiting. And that's a practice. That is a deep, deep, deep practice. And that's actually what's going to lead you into more of a queen. Your queen archetype is to be able to sit in the silence after you've revealed something tender. And yes, he may not like it. He may feel butthurt about it. He may respond beautifully. It may trigger something in him. And the thing I always like to circle back to is that we are artists of love. And as a byproduct, we are art. One of the main purposes of art, and always has been, is to create a ripple effect. So if you are living, breathing, embodied art, and then you have a feeling that you're like, oh, I deserve to have my own feelings and to bring more of me to the table, and he has his own experience, good, you're being art. And he has every right to have his own experience. He has every right to resonate with it or not, or kind of figure out his way through it. And it'll tell you a lot about y'all's compatibility, about the freedom in the connection, about the pillars that you both hold. And also something important to say is that there's his feedback, and how you do reveal your heart is also very valid. You know, maybe he has something to offer you of how it came out, and there could be even more attunement to how you share the truth of your heart. And that's beautiful as well. And I know I want that, not to have someone kind of put a wet blanket on me, but rather a king who says, hey, there's some more fine tuning that we can do here to reveal the truth of our heart with even more open hearts. Because a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times when women are like, I want to have all of me held, all of them is still a habitual response.
Yes.
It's a habitual response, or it's in reaction to a habitual response. So a great example of this is like sharp fucking anger. Anger in its purest form is heart-centered, very heart-centered. But then we have anger that's been infused with resentment, with projection, stories, with conspiracy theories. And when all of that starts to bubble up, especially over time, like if you've been holding something back, and then you start already preemptively thinking he's not going to understand you, then when you share your anger, it's not pure anger. It's filled with all that stuff from your past, stuff from who you think he is, how he's not going to love you after this. And then you shoot that directly into him. And I don't believe that any of us, if we're really growing into a mature path of the feminine, want that to be our landing pad. It's a stop. It's a stop to get to our destination. But in mature relationships, we want to receive our partner's feedback. If something didn't land very well, how can we continue to fine tune our expression so that we can get deeper into the real purity of the emotion, of the feeling rather than the story?
I love that so much, that refinement. That's been a big part of my journey. Yeah, and not just like, I'm a fully expressed woman, take it or leave it. See, I knew you couldn't help me. It's like, yeah, there's this journey of yeah, I love the way you spoke about that, like being open to the feedback and seeing that as a beautiful opportunity for us to attune and refine transmission of love even more.
Yeah.
You teach on this so fucking beautifully. Like you teach on this so
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love this. I mean, I've always felt so mesmerized by the somatics and in different ways of my journey. I used to be an acrobat and I've traveled all over and got all into different, bodybuilding and just like really obsessed with the body. But it wasn't until I found this work where I was like, okay, how does animism live in the body? Really? It's like, how does life force that permeates all things inhabit our body? And how do we let energies and essences and almost like different spirits inhabit us for the greater good of love, for the sake of love?
Yes. I'd love to hear, like, what do you witness in a woman when she taps into this, when she starts to, practice allowing, body to be animated by the many faces of the goddess?
So much radiance. So much radiance. It's the number one thing. And, my work, my containers, I'm always encouraging women to go into the dark side and let it all hang out. I love creating containers for women to bring all of their chaos, like so that they can learn how their body holds their chaos. The container is just a reflection of their body. So when you have a strong enough container, you can experience this like pulsating expansion of your chaos, your fullness. And the reason why we're not going into these sides, these dark sides, is because we don't know how to hold it. The discomfort, the feeling of it. Will I ever get out of it? What will happen if I go so far deep into it? You don't have those questions when you've trained your body's capacity to hold you. You don't have those questions. I'm never worried I'm going to get lost somewhere. I have definitely, like a year and a half ago, I really got to know what I would consider my darkest experience of mental psychosis. It wasn't classified as psychosis, but just like seeing the crazy of my head. I went to some crazy places and I wasn't worried I was going to get lost there. I understand energetics and how things actually just need to move through. It's like sometimes the energy of a frequency is looking for a willing vessel, not to take over, but to live and be freed. So where I was at that time in heartbreak was so intense, and it was so not from just me. It was from something beyond me. It was like my family systems. And it felt like I needed to be a willing vessel so that this stuff can move through. And it was gnarly. It was so gnarly. It was not pretty. It was not goddessy. It was like on the floor, feeling hopeless. Will I ever get through this? And that experience of learning how to be in that state in my mind and be with the mind trained my body's capacity. Okay, that nook and cranny now has been experienced. So my body's capacity to hold that kind of chaos has now been expanded. So anytime chaos comes up in my life in other shapes and forms, I have that trained in the vessel. And when women can trust themselves in that way, rather than what we've been taught to do, which is outsource. Are you my daddy? Are you my teacher? Are you my this? Are you my that? We finally feel like we're able to hold that, the entire, like all the possibilities of the world are available to you. I mean, maybe not every single possibility ever, but like somatically, you're not going to be outsourcing anymore. What are the types of relationships you want? You can have them. What kind of relationship with abundance do you want to have? You can have it. So much more is made possible to you when you're not outsourcing power, responsibility, wisdom. What do I do? How do I this? And it's all in the body. It's all living inside of your somatics. And that kind of freedom brings radiance. And another thing I notice a lot is laughter. So much laughter. I mean, there's lots of things that I'll have women do, and at the end of it, they are laughing so hard. And again, that's a source of radiance. Radiance comes from that kind of full-bodied aliveness.
Just like circling back to when I said the question or shared before around like that deep yearning so many women come to me with of like, I want him to accept and welcome all of me in a relationship. And, you know, I think you just spoke so beautifully to that. It's like, that's never something you can outsource. And often something like a man could be standing there and being like, bring it all. But if a woman isn't practiced in what you've just shared, she's still got to be with all that comes with bringing herself and offering these things to the relationship. So yeah, that was just such a beautiful, transmission of that.
I'll also say too, one more thing that's just kind of coming up. Sometimes when we are encouraged to bring all of us, it can create a little bit of a freeze response, you know, because we want it, but now others are expecting it of us. And now that's the practiced thing to do. And that's the feminine thing to do. And there's something wrong with me that I can't bring it all. I remember like just, I don't know, 3 years ago, I mean, so much has occurred in my expression in 3 years. Because even just 3 years ago, I remember I was dating someone and they had said, we're on a hike, and they said, you know, no matter what happens with you and I want you to choose better men. Like he was encouraging me because I was telling him about old dating stories. And that made me so mad. Because I was like, but I'm with you. Like, don't say shit like that. I'm with you. You're the man I'm choosing. Let's not talk about future, you know, and instead of knowing how to be like, what the fuck? Like, we're not talking about the future. We're together. You're my man. You're my man. Pound chest, pound chest. Instead, I was like mad. I was like, I don't like, you know, I just didn't know how to express that. And he could sense that. And he was like, are you mad? Like, okay, bring it, you know, encourage, like, show me. And I remember I picked up a tiny stone on our hike and I just threw it. It was such a weak attempt, but it was, you know, it was the tiny stone attempt. And that has paved a way for more and more and more because, you know, we can be expressive online all we want. Someone can be the greatest content creator ever. And then the minute you're in front of someone that you love and you've got something that wants to be expressed, there's all this other stuff that's abound, like, you know, parent wounds and therapy wounds and past relationships. And you're it's not combating, but you're facing all of those things when it comes to feminine instinct and responses. So if we're really trying to learn how to be responsive in the moment, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So give yourself permission to have, you know, the one step. What's the next one step to bring all of you? Maybe it's not all of you. There's probably so much more available. It doesn't have to be all of you, but maybe just 1 inch more of you. Just 1 inch more of you. Can you offer that? Eventually it becomes much, much more.
So good. I want to switch gears a little here. I'm sure like threads of the conversation we've just had are still going to be so relevant to where I want to take us next. But I love, and again, this is a huge part of the work I teach too. I love some of the stuff you've been bringing through lately around like our capacity as women to either, I think you put it as like Kingmaker or
Kingmaker, Kingbreaker.
Yes. I would love to hear more about that and how, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of women listening to this being like, well, I want to be the Kingmaker, obviously. How do I do that? I'd love to hear you speak a little more on that.
Yeah. So the Kingbreaker is the way that I view one, emasculation. We are Kingbreakers when we emasculate, and emasculation can be much more subtle than we think. It can be more subtle than you're not man enough. Like that's an extreme example, but we also have subtle ways we kind of jab at our partner. Something that I did is I was getting frustrated with a partner's like driving, you know, which is a pretty like
I use that example all the time when I speak to women about this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's relatable. It's very relatable. Like, and driving is like, it's very important for most men to feel like they are driving really well. And for a lot of women, we're such multitaskers that we can like carry on a conversation, and we could drive, and we could do this, and we can all these things. And I really jabbed at that when I was upset once, and it was in a very kind of covert, like, I think I should drive if we're gonna have a conversation in the car, because you can't seem to drive whenever we're talking, and I know you want to talk to me in the car. It was like not. It was a king breaker move, and as a kingmaker, we are holding the vision for the relationship as an entity. The relationship, it's not only about, I'm going to make you a better man, or I'm falling in love with your potential. It's absolutely not about falling in love with potential, but it's being about in a devoted, committed relationship to divine union, not only to your specific relationship, but just to union. Fuck, there's so much disturbance between men and women still, there's tons. And if you're taking the path of being the king maker, there's two different kind of avenues. The first one is in partnership. When you're in partnership, it's you learn how to uphold that vision through an open heart. So there are obviously ways, with my simple example, that you can clearly and with love share the impact the driving has had on you and what you desire. And that takes intentionality, and it takes being humble, because it's actually a lot easier just to be snarky about something. And it also feels like you're protecting yourself in a way from being vulnerable. It feels you're taking a power stance. And it's a really old dynamic where we think punishment works. We have been raised in a society that has tried to make punishment work, and it has never worked. As a kingmaker, you understand punishing does not work. Punishing him and punishing yourself to punish him, which we do all the time. Like, you're mad at your partner.
You're
mad at your partner.
Sorry, you go.
Go ahead. Sure.
I love that you pointed that out, because I've been having lots of conversations with clients lately, feeling like, and drawing this piece forward in them. And I once felt this around like, oh, but I have to point out what he's not doing. And if I wasn't pointing out, if I wasn't punishing him, if I wasn't pointing out what he wasn't doing enough of, or he wasn't doing right,
won't change.
He'll just think that everything's okay. He'll be complacent. Yeah. So I've never heard it in that way of like, our culture is normalized this, like, punishment is the way. It's just, that landed for me really powerfully.
It's also why we do it for ourselves. It's also why we punish ourselves. And, in the mind, there's just like this, intense kind of flogging we're doing mentally about ourselves, and flogging we're doing mentally about them. And it's not going to work. Never will work. And it's an art. It's a art form and a skill to learn how to get into radical attunement with what is your truth. Pick and choose your battles, find your truth about the thing that's really important to you, and then share it in such a way that also you would want information to be shared with you, and with love, as you're holding the vision. It's like the vision of driving together in the car with him being the driver. You want that probably too. You don't want to drive. Probably want him to drive and want him to pay attention to the GPS and the conversation and the road. So maybe there's a way you can work together so that conversation is saved for a specific time of the drive, and getting on the road and following the GPS is saved for the rest of the time. You can work together as a team. So there's so many avenues we can look at as a kingmaker in relationship. And there's also, just so I slide that in, when you're single. And this is about looking for the good in the masculine, looking for the good. And one of the things I talk about in I have this free masterclass about magnetizing your man. One of the things I talk about is that women who are emasculating and who are trying to find their man have the most scarcity They have the most scarcity because their pool becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And oftentimes what they'll do is that because they're already living in a scarce place in their mind, when someone does ask them out, even if they're not attracted to them or they're not a fit, they'll say, well, this is as good as it gets. So I'll just, I don't want to miss out on my one opportunity for an okay man. Then they'll go on a date and they'll kind of re-traumatize themselves and they'll remind themselves, oh yeah, this is why guys suck. But it's because of that scarcity mindset around men that's leading you to saying yes and picking these men that actually aren't fits for you so you can stay in your story. You can stay in the cycle rather than seeing the good in men. You can see the good in the man that's asking you out. Learn to actually see the good rather than seeing all the bad and then saying, well, why not? See the good in him. See, wow, he asked me out. He's taking leadership. He's interested in me. I can feel the juice that's being sent my way. Thank you, God, for like just letting me receive some energy and be in the vortex. And he's not a fit. And I can own both of these truths. And he's not a fit for where I'm going because I'm holding this vision of my relationship. And I do not live in a scarce world. I know there's so many more men available. I know this is not my only one man. And I'm going to keep sending out like my transmitter that I'm available. We choose the wrong men when we're living in scarcity. And then we also emasculate. So again, like the Kingmaker in single dynamics, when you're calling in your king, is learning how to see the good and also learning how to uphold the vision of the relationship you want everywhere you go, and believing that it exists.
I want to circle back to what you said around like punishment. If a woman is like, and I feel like the first step is being like, oh, like maybe being with the confronting truth of I'm a king breaker right now. Like, oh, I've got some of those dynamics. I would love to hear what you'd suggest to a woman that is moving beyond, like maybe realizes she's using punishment or emasculation in her relationship and is wanting to, support her man to, rise in his king energy. What would that look like?
Well, number one, I'd highly recommend that you have a conversation with him or have if you're in relationship, is you ask him, when do you feel emasculated by me, baby? When do you feel emasculated? What are the things? Lay it on me. Give it all to me. And then you breathe deep, you sit there and you honor this request you have just made by truly taking it in, expand your capacity to receive this feedback because it might not be comfortable. He might say things and then you'll be like, well, you deserved it that one time. Well, and you have to put all that to the side, like, and really truly step into the part of you that wants to know. Can you access the part of you that really wants to know? I want to know, and anchor in that the whole time. So get really clear on what are the ways that you emasculate. If you're single, then ask, you can ask exes if you're still in communication. You can ask friends, and then you can also just ask people or men you admire, what are the ways you feel emasculated in life? Maybe it's not something you've done, but just starting to receive from people, what are those things? How do you feel emasculated? And what would you love instead? What would you love instead? What are the actions of a woman that you would want to protect forever do?
Oh, I love that. Can you repeat that? That's so good.
Yeah. What are the actions of a woman you would want to protect forever do? So what does she do? If there's a woman you want to protect to the ends of the earth, what does she do? Describe her. Describe how she responds to the things that don't feel good for her in a way that makes you still feel honored and loved. Yeah. I think I was going to say something else, but I forgot what it was.
I love that.
Going into the whirlwind. Yeah.
I know we're coming up to time soon, but I just want to hear you speak on one more thing. I loved before when you were talking about women being the vision holders for relationships. I often call this like women being the torch bearers. And I think what I see sometimes is in the polarity space, women thinking that, oh, like that's not my job. He should lead. And I think this is something in my own partnership that I've come to see as such a sacred role. Like, can I own that I am the one that, is the vision holder, like can see so fucking clearly where we can go and what's possible for us. And yeah, I'd love to just hear you speak on like the way, and I don't know if you'd call it feminine leadership or what you'd really call that, but I just loved you to speak a little on, just like a woman owning that role in relationship.
Yeah, agreed. I did a masterclass recently called Kingmaker, and I was talking about this.
Okay.
And I was talking about how I believe one of the biggest downfalls of what we're taught in the polarity space is that it is the man's job to lead. He leads, of course, he leads. It's delicious. And I really believe that it's her who deepens the consciousness of the relationship. So I would call it feminine consciousness. Because we, in polarity spaces, we hear so much about how the feminine's love and the masculine's consciousness, which is true. But we need to bring attention to feminine consciousness and also masculine love. But feminine consciousness, she's usually the upholder of integrity. And it's ideal as a woman to choose a man who's already integral. It's not your job to teach him about integrity. And because you're so sensitive, your body is like this living, breathing integrity thermometer. It just is. So with that, we have to be responsible for when to cool it, relax. And when are the moments where we're like, okay, this is a moment, this is a time where I'm feeling a lapse of integrity or something isn't sitting right. Great example. One of my partners of the past, always would hang up the phone before either person said bye. And I would also hear him do it on phone calls with other people, people would be like, and then he'd hang up. And, it was always before anybody ever got to say bye. And it really in my body was like, this does not feel integral. Like, wait till the conversation is closed. Like, goodbye, hang up. Because it was so in his system. Boop. And it just like, it just killed something in me. And so I just lovingly brought it to him of like, hey, I know if you're doing it with me, I know it's happening in the world. And I just wonder how people across the world are feeling. They don't get to like officially close it every single time. You're always doing that. And, I just feel like this would be a really beautiful place for you to pause and wait until we say our goodbyes. Then you hit the button. And he did. He started doing that. That's a great example to me of something that is small, like that little integrity thermometer in our bodies where every time it's like, oh, we're not using a blinker. It's like, these are small examples. And then there's also big examples. Like there's huge examples. And we as women get to pick and choose the integrity places where we want to be a North Star for. Not all spaces. Like, I wouldn't be in a connection with someone where I'm teaching integrity around leakiness and sexual energy. No interest. Whoever I'm in connection with, that's a part they've been training in for a while. They've got really profound integrity with their sexual energy. But when it comes to like being able to drop deeper into their heart or expand wider in certain ways, we're naturally as women attuned to that. And when we, which so many of us happen, are ignoring that voice within us, the relationship is weakened. The relationship needs that part of you. And then he can take it and run with it. So you're like that spark. You're like the ember in the direction of consciousness. Like, this is what I feel about this thing, baby. Here's what I need. Here's what I want. Here's what I see. And then he's like, thank you for declaring that. Now I will direct it. So it's a two-parter. We're in this together.
I love that so much. And yes, the piece and some of the biggest, like my husband reflects this back, some of the biggest catalysts, over the last 5 years is when I've been brave enough and courageous enough to be like, hey, to speak into that integrity piece. And it's not then speak into it and then mother him to get to the place you see for him. It's right. Into it and then trust that man to, take it on board himself. Yeah, I've loved every second of this conversation. Truly, it's been
me too.
So deep, and I just yeah, I'm so grateful for your perspective in this work. And yeah, you just did such a phenomenal teacher. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Aw, thank you. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be here talking about all things I love.
Hmm. I would love, before we close up, just to hear where, if people have never heard of you, where can they find you, or like any ways that they can work with you right now?
Yeah, so I'm all over Instagram, which is at Madelyn Moon. And then I mentioned earlier, I have a free masterclass, Magnetize Your Forever Man. We'll give you the link for that so people can sign up for it. And then I have all sorts of offerings that pop up left and right. I've got events happening in August in Sedona. I have a 3-day intensive called Unbound that people can check out on my website. And then I also have a book called Artist of Love.
Amazing. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. This has been beautiful.
Thank you so much for having me.